Finance factory obedience is a phrase that sounds strange at first hearing, yet it carries a clear meaning when examined with care. It describes a system where financial work is organized like a factory and where obedience to process is valued above all else. In this imagined but very believable world, money is not just a tool for trade. It becomes a signal that directs human effort through rules and incentives that resemble a long assembly line. People move through this line performing tasks that convert time and attention into numbers that can be measured and exchanged. The phrase also suggests a culture in which workers and even leaders submit to these numbers as if they were laws of nature. In this way, finance factory obedience is both an economic model and a way of thinking about human life. To understand this idea, it helps to imagine a factory that does not produce cars or shoes but produces financial outcomes. Every desk is a workstation. Every email is a conveyor belt. Every spreadsheet is a mold that shapes raw data into profits or losses. Workers do not always see the final product. They only see their small piece of the process. They follow instructions because those instructions are tied to targets. Targets are tied to bonuses. Bonuses are tied to survival in a competitive world. The system rewards obedience to metrics rather than reflection on purpose. This is how a finance factory grows strong and how it trains its people to act in predictable ways. The roots of this system lie in the history of industrialization. When physical factories rose in the 19th century, they taught society how to break complex tasks into simple steps. The same logic later entered offices and banks. Accounting replaced craft. Ledgers replaced memory. Over time, software replaced ledgers and algorithms replaced clerks. Each step increased speed and scale. Each step also increased distance between action and consequence. A worker might move a number from one cell to another without knowing how it affects a family on the other side of the planet. Obedience to process makes this distance feel normal. It turns moral questions into technical ones. Finance factory obedience thrives in environments of uncertainty. When markets shift and risks multiply, people crave rules. They want a checklist that promises safety. Managers respond by building frameworks and controls. These structures can reduce chaos, but they can also trap imagination. When everyone follows the same model, new ideas struggle to emerge. Yet the system rewards those who fit into the model. Promotions go to those who deliver numbers on time. Creativity that does not fit into a spreadsheet often remains invisible. Over time, a culture of careful compliance replaces one of thoughtful exploration. The language of this culture reveals its priorities. Words like efficiency, optimization, and throughput dominate conversation. Human terms like curiosity or doubt are rarely mentioned. Even failure is framed as variance rather than as a lesson. People learn to speak in ways that align with the machine. This does not mean they lose their inner lives. It means they separate those inner lives from their work. A person might care deeply about social justice at home and yet manage a portfolio that funds harmful industries at work. The gap between values and actions is bridged by obedience to procedure. In many organizations, this obedience is not forced through fear alone. It is also encouraged through identity. Employees are told they are part of a high-performing team. They wear badges, attend conferences, and share a sense of elite belonging. This identity becomes another layer of the factory. To question the system feels like betraying the group. As a result, even intelligent and ethical people may defend practices that they privately find troubling. The factory does not need chains when it can rely on pride. Technology plays a central role in this dynamic. Modern finance relies on platforms that track every click and transaction. These tools provide transparency but also create pressure. When every action is measured, workers learn to optimize for what is measured. They may ignore what is not measured even if it matters. A trader might focus on short-term gains because those are visible on a dashboard. Long-term risks remain hidden until they explode. Obedience to the screen becomes more important than wisdom. There is also a psychological aspect to this system. Humans have a tendency to defer to authority and to follow routines. In a complex financial environment, no one can understand everything. People rely on models and experts. When a model outputs a recommendation, it carries the weight of science. Questioning it requires courage and time. Most people choose the safer path of acceptance. Over time, this creates a feedback loop. Models shape behavior and behavior feeds data back into models. The factory becomes self-reinforcing. Yet finance factory obedience is not entirely negative. It has produced wealth and stability for many societies. It allows large projects to be funded and risks to be spread. Pensions, insurance, and infrastructure all depend on coordinated financial systems. Without some level of obedience, these systems would collapse into chaos. The problem arises when obedience becomes blind. When rules become idols rather than tools, they limit human potential. One can see this tension in moments of crisis. When a market crashes or a bubble bursts, the usual metrics fail. Spreadsheets show losses instead of profits. In such moments, leaders must decide whether to stick to the script or to improvise. Some choose to double down on rules, which can worsen the damage. Others break from tradition and find creative solutions. History often celebrates the latter. Yet after the crisis passes, the factory tends to rebuild its old habits. Memory fades and routine returns. Education in finance often reinforces this pattern. Students learn formulas and models. They practice case studies that have clear answers. Rarely are they asked to reflect on ethical implications. They graduate ready to fit into the machine. Few are trained to redesign it. This is not due to malice but to inertia. Institutions teach what they know. They prepare people for existing roles rather than future needs. A different approach would treat finance as a social science rather than a mechanical one. It would emphasize human behavior and values alongside numbers. It would encourage questioning and dialogue. In such a system, obedience would be balanced by responsibility. Workers would still follow procedures, but they would also feel empowered to raise concerns. The factory would become more like a workshop where skilled individuals collaborate. Some organizations have begun to move in this direction. They introduce ethical guidelines and impact metrics. They reward long-term thinking. They create spaces for reflection. These changes are often small and fragile. The pressures of competition remain strong. Yet they show that alternatives exist. Finance does not have to be a cold machine. It can be a tool for shared prosperity. At the individual level, navigating finance factory obedience requires awareness. A worker can learn to see the difference between necessary structure and harmful rigidity. They can ask why a rule exists and whom it serves. They can seek mentors who value integrity. Small acts of courage can shift culture over time. Even a single question in a meeting can open space for new ideas. Leadership also matters. Leaders set the tone for how obedience is practiced. If they punish dissent, they create fear. If they welcome feedback, they create trust. Trust allows people to speak honestly about risks and opportunities. In a finance factory, trust can prevent disasters that arise from hidden problems. It can also inspire innovation. There is a broader societal dimension as well. Governments and regulators shape the environment in which financial factories operate. Clear rules can prevent abuse, but overly rigid ones can stifle growth. Finding the right balance requires dialogue between policymakers, industry, and the public. Citizens have a stake in these systems even if they do not work in them. Their savings, jobs, and communities are affected by financial decisions made far away. The media also plays a role in shaping perceptions. When success is measured only by profit, people assume that profit is the ultimate goal. Stories that highlight social impact and sustainability can broaden the narrative. They remind society that finance is a means, not an end. A factory that serves human well-being is more worthy of obedience than one that serves only numbers. Art and literature offer another lens. Writers and filmmakers often explore the human cost of financial systems. They tell stories of workers who feel trapped or of communities affected by distant decisions. These narratives can awaken empathy. They can challenge the myth that the market is an impersonal force. In reality, it is made of choices. The future of finance factory obedience will likely be shaped by new technologies. Artificial intelligence and automation promise even greater efficiency. They also risk deepening the distance between decision and consequence. When algorithms trade at speeds beyond human perception, accountability becomes murky. Who is responsible when a program causes harm? The developer, the user, or the system itself? These questions demand careful thought. There is also the issue of inequality. Financial factories can concentrate wealth. Those who control capital gain power. Those who provide labor may feel expendable. Obedience in such a context can feel like submission. Addressing this requires structural reforms such as fair wages, inclusive ownership, and access to education. A more balanced distribution of power can make obedience less oppressive and more cooperative. Environmental sustainability is another frontier. Finance directs investment. It can either accelerate destruction or support regeneration. Obedience to outdated models that ignore ecological limits can lead to disaster. New metrics that account for carbon and biodiversity are emerging. They challenge the factory to update its blueprints. Following them requires courage because it may reduce short-term profits. Yet long-term survival depends on such shifts. In the end, Factory Obidence is a mirror of human nature. It reflects our desire for order and our fear of uncertainty. It shows how easily tools can become masters. It also reveals our capacity for change. Systems are built by people and can be rebuilt by people. Awareness is the first step. Dialogue is the second. Action is the third. A healthy financial system would blend discipline with wisdom. It would use factories of process to handle complexity while leaving room for human judgment. Obedience would be given to principles rather than to blind routines. People would understand not only how to do their jobs but why those jobs matter. They would see the faces behind the numbers. Such a vision may seem idealistic, yet history shows that values can shift. Practices that once seemed inevitable like child labor or unchecked pollution have been challenged and reformed. Finance too can evolve. The factory can be redesigned. Conveyor belts can be rerouted. Workers can become partners. For anyone working within a financial organization, the question is not whether to obey but what to obey. Rules that protect fairness deserve respect. Rules that hide harm deserve scrutiny. By choosing wisely, individuals can honor both their professional roles and their moral selves. In doing so, they help transform the culture from within. For students entering the field, curiosity is a powerful ally. Learning the mechanics of finance is important, but so is learning its impact. Seeking diverse perspectives can prevent tunnel vision. Ethics courses and community engagement can ground abstract models in lived reality. This prepares future leaders to build better factories. For investors, the choice of where to place capital is also a form of obedience. Money flows toward what is valued. Supporting companies that act responsibly sends a signal. Over time, these signals can reshape markets. Even small investors can contribute to change. For the public, understanding finance reduces its mystique. When people know how systems work, they can demand accountability. Transparency empowers democracy. It ensures that factories serve society rather than the other way around. In conclusion, Factory Obidence describes a powerful pattern in modern life. It captures how structured financial systems shape behavior and thought. It warns of the dangers of blind compliance while acknowledging the benefits of coordination. It invites reflection on how to align economic activity with human values. By engaging with this concept, individuals and institutions can move toward a more conscious and compassionate form of finance.